Okay, so in sociology, this past week we've been talking a lot about individuals who are experiencing disability and how they navigate in society. And a big focus is areas that are inaccessible to them or particular like infrastructure that they struggle with. So my first question to you is, are you able to identify like any of your personal blind spots that you have toward people with physical or mental disability?
Okay, so in healthcare, I have noticed that a common thing that I would say is a blind spot for a lot of healthcare workers, especially with the elderly, because they can't hear as good. So a lot of them are deaf. And I've noticed that it becomes a disconnect problem with communicating with them because, we may speak the same language and we may think that they're understanding what we're saying, but we say it too quickly and they don't understand, or maybe they can't hear us. And then if we're not able to get that information to them, then, they're not taking their medicine on time, they're not taking the right medicine. And it becomes a problem because then we might get impatient because we think that they don't care, they're not listening, but they just can't hear us, and that becomes a problem, and it's a blind spot for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd say that's really good. Like a lot of us just think speaking at this cadence is normal, and at this like volume you can perfectly understand this, and it takes you a second to like step back and like actually consider the other person and how they're receiving what you're saying. Yeah. The second part of this is if you're able to identify and discuss an obstacle or a challenge in today's society that you feel disenfranchises or discriminates almost against disabled people.
I would say one thing I've noticed, like at our apartment complex in particular, a lot of people will have a physical disability, or maybe they're deaf, or they're in a wheelchair, and we only have one elevator near our apartment, and like it's mainly used for most of the apartment, so it's broken quite often, and there will be a few days where they don't get it fixed. And that obviously puts them at a huge disadvantage because they are going to struggle getting up to their apartment if they don't live on the first floor, if the elevator is broken for a few days. And another thing I've noticed is some apartments have doorbells that like have a flashing light so that if you're deaf, like that someone's at the door, whereas like ours doesn't. So some people can be at a disadvantage just like in their own apartment, in their own space.
Yeah. I also think about it too with like fire drills.
Mm-hmm.
They always, well, not even drills, like in the event of a real fire in the apartment, they always tell you like don't use the elevators, take the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what about, the people who are in wheelchairs? How are they supposed to navigate a literal fire in their building?
Yeah.
Like how are they supposed to get around that?
And not all of them live on the first floor, but then there isn't a plan put in place for how they are going to get outside, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And then lastly, are you able to discuss or identify how you would go about eliminating that problem, or if you have a solution that you could present to fixing things like, the elevator situation?
I feel like for the elevator situation, we should have more like ADA compliant housing on the first floor. I feel like those rooms should get to go to them first. And I feel like that might not always be the case. It's kind of like who gets to pick first gets the first floor. And then, like getting things like the flashing lights for the fire alarms and the doorbells just put into place. Some people have them, some people don't, but it's not a practice that's like all the time. Like it doesn't take place all the time. And I just think that, if people plan for those things a little bit better, then it wouldn't be as big of a problem.
Yeah, like these things shouldn't be like fancy, flashy new features. Like they should literally just be integrated as part of society because there are people, a big portion of people who are disabled in some capacity. And so the fact that these would be like novel items or just like, ooh, cool advancements in tech, that's not really the right way to approach it. They should just be very basic things that people get to experience so that they can function normally in society.
Yeah, it should just be part of our general like shooting for public health for these people, because like this is how they live their life. So we need to implement things that help them live their normal daily life without it being like a huge deal.
Agreed. Well, thank you.